Industrial Revolution and Society 5.0, Digital Twins, EdTech, where we will discuss what we are needing to do to keep steps for smart governments and businesses in terms of going forward. Today, I'm joined by the chairman of MDEC, Dr. Rais Hussin, Ricardo Greenfield of EurA-AG, and Jayne Chan of Startup Hong Kong. Dr. Hussin is chairman of MDEC, which is Malaysia Digital Economic Corporation, and is an avid strategist, perennial wordsmith, social engineer, serial entrepreneur, and serious policy intellectual. He's also the president and CEO of EMIR Research that specializes in data-driven research at any given national or international issues. He has more than 23 years of corporate experience in leading and managing local and global telecommunications, technologies, and IT companies. Then we are joined by Jayne Chan, who is head of Startup Hong Kong and Invest Hong Kong. Invest Hong Kong is a government department with a mission to attract and retain foreign direct investment with strategic importance to the economic development of Hong Kong. Startup Hong Kong is a division of within Invest Hong Kong, helping foundations and innovative scale-ups from overseas to set up businesses in Hong Kong. Right, my screen just frozen, my apologies. Basically, the information on startup ecosystem should provide by connecting people to the startup community, hosting startup events, and helping to foster a positive environment for startups to thrive. Prior to joining Invest Hong Kong, Jayne was an executive director of TIE, a global non-profit network focused on fostering entrepreneurship and executive roles at advertising and digital agencies, startup investor and incubators, management consulting, and manufacturing companies. Then we are joined by Ricardo Greenfield, who is managing director of EurA-PT, which is a branch of a branch based in Portugal. As a technology and innovation consulting operating throughout Europe, they support them and market leaders of tomorrow in the innovation process for the last 20 years, the research and development of new products to make launch and international marketing of innovations. They accelerate innovations and to help the regional, state, and European subsidies and implement cross-sectoral technology transfer. In addition, they manage more than 50 national and international innovation networks in which entrepreneurial development and associations form part of the science and industry-related initiatives that they've initiated. So, a little bit of an opportunity for you to meet the panelists, the esteemed panelists. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Rais Hussin, who would like to just introduce himself.
I think Hilton did a great justice by introducing myself just now. I'll just talk about Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation. It's a company that was a government agency chartered to lead and transform the digital economy space in Malaysia. I think that's something that is most of you already know. We've been existing about 25 years now, and recently we went through some, post my appointment, we had some restructuring from the board to the management, and we are trying to lay out a new thought process, which we call it as Malaysia 5.0, loosely based on Society 5.0. Everyone knows that how Japan started with the 5.0 back in 2016. Abenomics, 3 thrusts. You have the stimulus package, physical stimulus package. You have the growth issues and also the quantitative easing. In the layman's language, print money. All 3 things were facing a similar crunch at a similar time. And then he was thinking, what do we do next? Then the Society 5.0 came about, which was led by initially the government agencies, but it was latched on quickly by the first company called Hitachi, and thereafter is the rest is history. Today, Society 5.0 is being replicated in many countries. They call themselves differently. Germany 4IR, Norway something else. In Malaysia, we call it Malaysia 5.0. I think that is the way to go, because we have so many technology layers and how can it all best suit and focus on a human-centered approach. I think that is what we want to go. MDEC has been in forefront in this space. Yes, unprecedented time requires unprecedented measures. It cannot be precedented. We need to, you see, when Liverpool has a problem with the centre backs, they have to dig down and get whoever the players that has and fit into the system and still play well. Anybody from Portuguese, I'd be happy with them because they've given us Diego Jota, who's a fabulous player. So likewise, we need to see what is happening in our environment. I think post-COVID, we are still in COVID. We hope the vaccines work. We have some conflicting news about the COVID-19 vaccine. Be that as may, we need to be prepared. And again, it cannot be textbook solution to the problems that we are facing now. We know now that when a troika of challenges like the economy, the pandemic, and in Malaysia's case, we have to a certain extent political conundrum. And three is a potent challenges that we are facing at one go. Again, the economy is not confined to Malaysia or region. It is the entire global world. Last time we had recession pocketed, financial crisis pocketed to this region, but this time the entire global, the entire world. So things are going to be a lot different. And I always tell the people here in Malaysia, with everyone, that if we are not prepared to embrace 4IR, if we're not prepared to take the waypoints of Malaysia 5.0, then be prepared to be a digital colony of others. And what happens then is, physical colony, we can still fight. Economic colony, we can still introduce parameters like protection, tariff, this and that, cabotage policies, and so on. But digital economy, digital colonization, we can't do anything. So this is very critical for us, and Malaysia has embraced it holistically. We have the PM chairing the National Digital Forum and 4IR Council. That's a good thing. We have 6 ministries down under. But again, there are still a lot of things that we need to work together and recalibrate, rechart, and to find that way that we can actually address the current circumstances and situation. Be that as may, we are ready for 4IR, we are ready for the Malaysia 5.0.
Thank you, Dr. Hussin. Jayne, could you just talk a little bit about your role with Startup Hong Kong and its the challenges that are you being faced and going forward?
Absolutely. Can I just start by saying, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, actually, because in this connected world, I think we're all on different kind of time zones. It is a real pleasure to be here on this panel. As Hilton mentioned, I am the head of StartmeUp at Invest Hong Kong. StartmeupHK is actually an initiative within an investment promotions agency. So Invest Hong Kong helps overseas companies to actually set up in the city. I specifically look after the startup sector. And when I say the startup sector, we're including all the different kind of stakeholders. So we're talking about the investors, we're talking about the corporate innovation labs, the accelerators, the incubators, all these different stakeholders that really create a very strong ecosystem. Our team is involved in helping to get them established, to get them connected to other kind of players. Our fundamental role is threefold. I mean, first and foremost is definitely providing pragmatic support to startups when they set up in Hong Kong. So, these things will be, could be very simple things like recommending a legal firm for them to set up an entity here in the city or opening a bank account, to something that's much more, I suppose, specific. If they are a smart city company, for example, then we might look into connecting them with various kind of government departments involved in this kind of area. So the fundamental side is providing startups support to startups and related kind of companies. The second thing we do a lot is actually building the startup ecosystem. So there's no point in trying to attract all these really strong companies from overseas to set up if we don't have the fundamentals in place. So when we're talking about fundamentals, we really are focusing on three major things: access to market, access to funding, and access to talent. I think these are the, quite fundamental things, regardless of, how great your city is. If you don't have these kind of items in place, these building blocks, I think there's going to be a time when you run out of, support for these kind of companies. And the third thing that we get involved in is actually promoting Hong Kong internationally as a tech hub. So prior to lockdowns, I used to travel quite a lot to different locations, and speak at various events, as well as meet with different groups of people to tell them about the opportunities that they may not know about that's going on in Hong Kong. So, even some people within Hong Kong don't know what's the latest kind of developments that are happening. And as a government department with, I suppose, oversight and connections with both government and private sector, we're in a much better position to know what's going on and to disseminate that kind of information. So, for example, I was in New York at the beginning of this year before all the lockdown kind of happened, and we were meeting with a bunch of fintechs. So we would tell them about basically the government's latest developments in terms of the digital banking licenses, the digital insurtech licenses that are available, the regulatory sandboxes, as well as all these other kind of developments and opportunities thereof. So fundamentally, that's what we do. And just to touch on a little bit about the kind of topics when we're talking about, Dr. Hussin mentioned Malaysia 5.0. I think, Malaysia, I'm a great fan of what you folks are doing, actually. I've been following, some of the developments that you folks have been doing. For our side, we basically, when we're looking at society and incorporating innovation and technology to make things easier and better for our people, for our economy, for our environment, we wrap that all up within our smart city blueprint. Actually, we call it a smart city blueprint. It's not the smart city in the typical sense whereby we're talking about technology that's specific for physical kind of space. We're talking about technologies to help the economy, to help the people, to help obviously the physical kind of space, connectivity, transport, mobility, all these kind of things is wrapped up inside that. And I'm looking forward to be able to touch on that a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jayne. Ricardo.
Thanks very much, Hilton. Short introduction from my side, just to complement a little bit what Hilton already presented. I'm a branch manager for EurA-AG, so we are a German-based consultancy company, but of course we're very most active in Europe. So my responsibility is actually to head the international projects, and I'm actually managing the project, the branch in Brussels for this. I'm also the managing director of EurA Portugal, where we are also very much active and have a larger team. I'll just add that mentioning Liverpool after last year when we got excluded from the UEFA Cup in the quarterfinals is hitting a sore spot, but congratulations nonetheless. And basically we have a nice team here. What we focus on, we focus very much on setting up innovation ecosystems from different breadths, right? So the specialty that we start up from Germany is we focus a lot on, I would say, more innovation networks, where we focus on a specific area and a specific technology that a certain region, in this case Germany, deems strategically interesting to pursue. And here we bring together startups, research institutes, SMEs, and government entities to help develop, where this technology could go further. Of course, this brings us always to the technology, not just in digitalization, but of course, we have a lot of activities in digitalization, because this is, of course, a strategic topic that we have to focus on. Here we help also the companies polish off the roadmap of the networks and also secure funding to actually help launch these projects. What we do with the European Union, that's more on a broader level. So here it's also ecosystem management. Here we're talking about substantial greater breadth. It's also across many industries. And here, in particular, this project, we have two projects actually ongoing, but one of them focuses on developing, I would say, one of the largest innovation ecosystems in Europe, which is the European Innovation Council. Here we help bring over 5,000 of the most innovative companies in Europe in the deep tech sector, and we help match the funding that was already given from a public perspective with funding from large corporations, investors, and also public procurement cities. So this point that Jayne was also talking about, something we're working on now is also how can we help focus on innovative procurement process. We also help the companies grow with specific mentoring services. And of course, since just a little caveat regarding digitalization, we're talking about a very large region. We're talking about the European region. So here we always have to think of how can we bring these companies together, even more so now during the pandemic, but also how do they connect? And here we also have an online community that is actually pushed forward by the European Union. And here the European Innovation Council in this sense, and we're also helping to see how we can shape that, how we can develop this online platform, online space where we have different actors with different profiles, how they can conduct business together, how can they help each other, and how we can create momentum to complement the other services we specify. In a nutshell, just about myself, I have a PhD in innovation ecosystems, innovation systems, partly for University of Portugal, partly MIT. And I'm very passionate about that. I'm happy to be able to join my academics with my professional work.
Thank you very much indeed, Ricardo, very enlightening. Dr. Hussin, MDEC recently published a Society 5.0 based project, which you've now called Malaysia 5.0. And it was based on a book that you wrote with Esquadra, and recently, with the development of the infrastructure you put in place through MDEC and its associations and platforms like Malaysia Biz website, which you recently launched. Can you just talk a little bit about the road forward that you are building for MDEC and Malaysia 5.0?
This is the 25th year of MDEC's existence, and we need to look and relook and review which part that we have undertaken and what more that we should do and how we should move forward. Obviously, we had 25 years ahead in the Southeast Asian region, so to speak. But have we capitalized on that? These are the questions that we need to ask genuinely, sincerely, and answer honestly. And we do have good, amazing talents here. And when we talk about in the context of Malaysia 5.0, COVID-19, as everyone must have heard by now, has fast accelerated the adoption of digitalization and digitization amongst the SMEs, amongst the companies and nationwide. Now, what do we do? Do we do the same old? Or do we do how things were before and stay in the comfort zone? And I like to use the word Gegenpress. Gegenpress is intensity. I think the German will tell you. You do things with great intensity. Just like Liverpool, when they play with great intensity. So that's Gegenpress. So what we need to do now is bring all these things, the whole various stakeholders. I think Jayne talked about the smart city. When we talk about Malaysia 5.0, we are talking about super smart citizens. And how do we accommodate them? What are the areas? We have many, many layers. Let's take an example of AI, for instance. If you look at, in a very simplistic format, if you look at a normal car, there are blind spots. But with the advent of a limited level of AI, now you can actually be prevented from getting into any collisions and all that. Going forward, you have this autonomous cars, this and that, and so on. So how all these things will benefit the people? It has to be human-centered. It cannot be the other way around. You cannot let technology, human serving the technology. It has to be that's a beauty part of what the Society 5.0 is all about, and what really triggered and initiated our interest to ensure that whatever we do, whether it's digital economy or digital what, it must be for the many. It cannot be for the few. And so we came up with a certain vision, still developing, and this thing has to go to the Prime Minister because he is chairing the council. Sounds like a society deeply integrated with technology, governed by inclusive and equitable eco-environmental, a combination of the word eco and environment, principles and practices. So there are three core areas in this area. I mean, everybody will talk about infrastructure, which is important. Malaysia is lucky that on that wherewithal, the infrastructure part, we have almost 24 fiber rings that rings around Peninsula Malaysia. So which means the capacity-wise we have good. But what about the last mile? How the reach to, say, the Sabah Sarawak part? So those are the things that we need to talk about. Education is very core and important in this area. Have the curriculum be sufficiently reviewed or restructured or refined or reinvented to face the new way of doing things. Again, the COVID-19 forced the closure of schools and universities. Suddenly we found out that it's not easy to do online courses, right? Sometimes they just freeze the pain and they go there and play football while the teacher and professors are talking laboriously about certain principles and policies. So there are many, many issues that we are beginning to understand, which we should have do it before preemptively. But again, COVID-19 really, really fast-tracked a lot of the learning curve to do what we need to do. If we don't do, that will be a bigger consequences. I mean, as we speak, I think today Japan unveiled 708 billion injection or stimulus package with almost about 1 trillion yen in the area of digital adoption, fast-tracking digitization. I think I should be on the flight to Japan after this. Budget. But Malaysia too, we introduced those budget. Now, the important thing about a stimulus budget is, yes, we have the budget. Are the budget being allocated in the right areas? Are the budget is being used prudently in the right areas? Obviously, I talked about just now that there's unprecedented times. It cannot be a precedented way, a textbook way of solving the problems. And therefore, we can't talk about fiscal prudence. We are talking about stimulus, right? And I did talk about the vaccine just now. The two vaccines that I can talk about is Pfizer and Moderna. And we have issues. We got the Pfizer in, but supply chain logistics, it needs negative 70 degrees transportation capabilities. Our hospitals are not yet equipped with the negative 70 per degree refrigeration. Likewise in Moderna, negative 20. Even if you take Pfizer, you have 2 dosages, 2 months separately, and they give guarantee for only 12 months. So what are all these things to a country like Malaysia? We are largely a trading country in petroleum that is hard hit because of less consumption of people are basically staying home, doing everything at home for once. Then you have this tourism. Malaysia is one of the biggest revenue earner is tourism. That has been hard hit. If you look at the McKinsey report is telling that the people will travel again, consider to travel again, post-vaccine will be after third quarter, fourth quarter 2021 or 2022. So this is going to have a hard impact on us. And do not forget, the McKinsey report also talked about a few million jobs are going to be obsolete as we speak in America, in Europe, even in Malaysia now. In the banking sector, there are more IT professionals than the finance and banking guys. Because with the introduction of AI, you automate most of the processes. They work faster, more robust, and more transparent. So things are going to change massively. And we hope that with this Malaysia 5.0, recalibrating the education system, improving on the infrastructure that we have, those are the two key things. And also value add in terms of the digital transformation plans. These three things will become the essential part of driving Malaysia 5.0. We do not have time. As I said, I was appointed here on June 15, and I had to understand what MDEC was then and what MDEC is going to be beginning January 1st. We need to attract the right talents into Malaysia. We need to attract the right companies into Malaysia. And believe me, Malaysia is so suited to many things. We have a market of 32 million locally, 650 million regionally as ASEAN, which will grow to 771 million in 2 years' time. And we also have access, because of the branding of Malaysia as a Muslim, progressive Muslim country, 2.2 billion market in 57 Muslim countries. So these are all that is very good, a springboard and so on, beautiful stories to tell that the trade officers will normally tell you.
Brilliant.
What
Thank
we
you.
have to do, what MDEC have to do is that to be able to take advantage of that using Malaysia 5.0 as a means to achieve what we wanted to achieve.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussin. It's very, very interesting. Jayne, Hong Kong is part of the Greater Bay Area, an initiative that encompasses 9 mega cities within the Guangdong, including Shenzhen in southern China, and the special administration areas of Hong Kong and Macau. Now, the objective we have is to promote an in-depth cooperation amongst these 9 cities to provide development and living opportunities for people in those areas. Can you tell us more about this plan, particularly from a digital transformation perspective?
I certainly can tell you more about the plans for the GBA, as we call it, actually the Greater Bay Area. In terms of digitalization, I'll definitely focus on the tech kind of policies that will be rolled out. But just as a background in terms of what is the Greater Bay Area, it's actually, first and foremost, it's a national policy. It was actually promulgated by the central authorities, started in 2016, and it was basically ratified by the 9 cities within southern China and Hong Kong and Macau in 2017. Now, what it means is basically it's an intent to tighten up the integration and movement of people, goods and currency within this 11 major cities in southern China. Now, the idea is that, if we look at some of the stats involved in the GBA, we are talking about an economic output. These 11 cities is the equivalent of the economic output of 11% of China's GDP. I mean, for somewhere, for 9 cities that take up something, I think land space, it estimates to be about something like 4% of mainland China, of China overall, to take up such a massive percent of the GDP. And we know that China is, obviously one of the growth engines of the future, and is at this moment in time the second biggest economy. It's massive. So the potential opportunities involved in that is very big. If we're also looking in terms of population, we're talking about, the stats vary slightly, but we use like 71 to 74 million people within that. Now, that is bigger than lots of countries, and you're still talking about a very small part of southern China, that has these big opportunities. So we've got the kind of the people there, the numbers of the population of 71 million people, and you'll find that typically this group of people residing in these kind of locations tend to be very sophisticated. Actually, if you look at per capita GDP, and of this kind of area compared to even places like Shanghai and things, it is the highest per capita GDP. So you're talking about a very sophisticated kind of audience, which is hugely conducive to tech development, actually. So on the one hand, you've got Hong Kong, which is one of the world's financial centers. We are also the only jurisdiction with a common law system running within China. We run a one country, two systems. That's why we're called a special administrative region. It just means that with the rule of law, the IP protections, the fact that we are one of the world's financial centers and right next door to a hugely innovative city that is Shenzhen, which, I don't think there's ifs and buts. I think Shenzhen will become one of those big, technopolises of the world in years to come. For us to be on the doorstep of that with our, really highly educated workforce, we're talking about 5 of Hong Kong's universities, research universities, are in the QS rankings, top 100 universities. We've got the language capabilities, we've got the financial know-how, we've got the legal, state that we are in. And next door to that big, massive market, just in southern China. The opportunities are really immense. Not to mention the fact that, Shenzhen is actually home to, some of the major technology, China's technology companies. Like the Tencents of the world. So, WeChat, for example, which a lot of the economy in China runs on, is based there. The headquarters is there. DJI, which was actually created in Hong Kong at one of the universities, and now make Shenzhen their home. That's where they're also headquartered. You've got the Huawei's, all these kind of companies. And as we've seen in Silicon Valley, these kind of these technical institutions and educational institutions create spin-off and cluster effects as well. So for us, as a business kind of proposition, is incredibly strong. Also for us in Hong Kong and Macau, the fact that we have this high-speed network that takes us from the center of Hong Kong to Shenzhen, the first stop in Shenzhen, takes us 14 minutes on the train, 1-4. It takes a shorter time to go to Shenzhen than it is to walk from one end of Central to another. That kind of infrastructure means that the living circle is also a potential there as well. And with the central government, being very much, pushing the using the technology and the innovation side, we think there is a lot of capacity to basically leverage tech to create a kind of holistic kind of work-live cycle within, southern China. So it's something we're pretty excited to see, actually.
Thank you for that. Wow, talking about large regions of the world, we go over to Ricardo. EurA is among one of the 500 fastest growing companies in Germany. Congratulations.
Thanks.
As a success strategist, these companies represent the innovation factor and the performance strengths of Germany as a business location, given these businesses have demonstrated the highest turnover growth, where the turnover is in excess of 100,000 euros in 2006 to a turnover of about just under 2 million euros in 2019. What role did the digital transformation projects you were working on contribute to this?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Hilton. I think one of the main reasons to do with our growth is the fact that we focus normally on how we can help governments and regions, or companies for that matter, if you go from the broader to the more worthwhile, actually stay on the forefront of innovation and in which direction they can develop. And I would say that the project that we've been able to do in cooperation with different regions, different governments, have actually pushed us forward in that sense. And this is a work that we are constantly trying to do it on our side. So specifically speaking, I'll give you an example. For example, in Germany, we know we have a very strong automotive sector, right? So we create, together, sponsored by the Ministry of Technology and Economics, we developed a network and shared a network focused on autonomous self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles, which of course is one of the areas where there is the concern that we may be lagging behind in that sense. So there's a need to develop. But the work that we do there is trying to understand what kind of trends, where the network should be going, and also how we can recombine partners with existing competencies to try and focus or refocus on this new challenge. And this is a concrete example, and we try and do that in all the networks that we manage, right? It's always about, okay, what do we have now? Which direction is the technology going to take us? And how can we try and readjust these competencies? And here we then help to actually secure funding for these companies, for them to actually go for the extra step. Sometimes we have spillover effect between these networks. For example, we started with this network of automotive cars, self-driving cars, and we noticed that, okay, for this, we may need to have digitalization on the roads themselves, right? So we have another network that also sprung up to start bringing together actors. Okay, how do we try and identify what kind of smart sensors and smart systems we need on an actual road to help this interface better. So this, of course, we have on many different areas. These are just when in particular, we'll focus also on the areas we have Industry 4.0 applied to farming, for example. This is also a topic that could be of high interest. But also the key enabling technologies for that, right? I mean, AR, augmented reality, smart sensors, all that kind of stuff. So how we can, AI for energy systems. So these are then enabling technologies that we can use to actually focus on a topic. So that, here we help the companies actually, and the regions focus on what technology and what direction they should go. We then have these other projects. We've actually been also very successful where we focus on a much larger scale. For example, our project with the European Innovation Council. Here, we're not as much focused on the policy perspective of what should be actually funded and where the points should actually be, where the strongest points should be. Here, we're more on a supportive role regarding, okay, what's the next step? The companies have been funded, and this was a strategic decision that was taken top. Okay, this is the areas that are important here, just a point. Are you? Can I speak a little bit louder? If I just got a small message.
Yes.
Can you hear me correctly?
I can hear you very well.
Okay, good. Okay. Where was it? Here we have a more supportive role in which we know these companies have been funded and there is a strategic importance behind this. How can we help with the next step? What is the next step? It's helping to secure corporations with the large corporates in Europe, okay? Try and really bring these technologies that were initially developed and already are mature enough for the market to take for the next step. Then how do we match with investors, if they can really take it to the next step? And also, how we do they learn from each other, right? Because we are able to present them with opportunities. So we're talking about, for one company, they can have 20 meetings in 2 days with high-ranking officials from a corporation. But okay, how do they take the most about this so they don't waste anybody's time, they don't waste their own time also, right? And another point we're also looking into, which is very interesting, is innovative procurement, which is also related to a city, right? If a city has a new solution, and let's say that they want to develop a new smart solution for the city, that city maybe is not yet on the market. So here we're now seeing how can we support in these new innovation procurement processes, where the company or the beneficiary can already with the city start co-developing this solution. Here we're also offering some support on this. I mean, this is so here. I mean, we try and add value. And to answer your question, try and get back to your question. I think the fact that we see that there is the need for this kind of assistance. I think that would be one of the reasons why we've had some growth here and we've been successful doing that.
Thank you for that. Dr. Hussin, Malaysia's almost 1 million small and medium-sized enterprises, making up a significant number of the total businesses. I think it's around 98%, 98.5%. Many of these businesses consist of micro SMEs, which in fact 21% are actually female entrepreneurs and founders. Now, these SMEs face some challenges like the lack of business connections, digital transformation tools, digital transformation twins for their companies, even EdTech support. How is MDEC tackling this?
SMEs are very key to us as the engine of growth that you must have heard of all the time. They hire 7.7 million working Malaysians, contributing 34% to our GDP. And there are about 1.2 million MSMEs. They are massive. Obviously, the pandemic, with all this movement control order or shutdown, whatever they call it, other places, they affected them quite badly. Some have basically ended their operations. Some are still surviving. Some are in a better situation because they have had the reserves that they can count on. Now, the government came up with some stimulus packages, which I loosely call it Survive to Restart package. So you survive during this period through some stimulus budget and some wage subsidies and those kind of things. so that when the time comes to restart, which we are in the phase now, in the recovery phase, then they'll be better positioned. Yes, these are the people who requires a lot of help. You talked about micro SMEs. There are also EdTech front, the agriculture technology. He talked about farm technology just now, Ricardo. Let me tell you this. It is a huge challenge to help them. It is not easy. Given the shutdown at one point of time, the entire supply chain, we quite depend on, at that point of time, China. And when that thing is closed, a lot of products were not coming into Malaysia. And this has really, really impacted us very badly. But that also tells us that we need to diversify the source of, in terms of creating a new supply chain. That's number one. Number two, as far as the SMEs is concerned, we're trying to accelerate the digitization and digitalization process. How? During this MCO, movement control order, or shutdown, every one of us must have ordered something online. So the adoption to this has been fast accelerated in Malaysia. Some time ago, people are very afraid to do any transaction on internet because of fraudulent credit card and this and that. Today, everybody does it, So everybody does it because that's why there was a fast acceleration. So MDEC came with a lot of programs and either digitization, adoption, acceleration, training, grants, many ways to trying to even matching grants to push these SMEs to come into this world of digital. On the front of agri-technology, for instance, agrotech, our farmers have been perennially caught in this perpetual vicious cycle of poverty. They do produce a lot, but unfortunately the middleman controls everything else in terms of pricing. So that was a big problem. So there was some platform that came up which allows this B2B, B2C businesses start trading their chilies, their whatever produced on the platform. So that's another way. We also try to introduce digitalization in fertigation, for instance. If you notice, Malaysia is still largely a net importing country. For food, for 2019, our net was 60 billion ringgit. So we have, in the bankers' terminology, a natural off-taker. We have a captive demand of 60 billion ringgit. We have about 1.2 million unemployed or underemployed youth and graduates. And we have very good fertile land. So isn't it a nice mix between the three? And using the technology 4IR in chili, in pineapple, in shrimp farming and all that. So we are doing a host of few things to trying to give them that hope given the current situation. Primarily not because of their own doing, it is because COVID-19, nobody thought that this thing can come and can have that kind of impact. So yes, so you have on the SMEs, the small and medium-sized enterprises, we have a lot of accelerator programs, digitize all that is available on our website. And then for the micros, we also tailor-make some of the programs for them, and to help them to weather through the storm. And when ready to restart, then they can. Otherwise, if we let them go, if there's no stimulus budget for them, there's no wage subsidies for them, there's no tax allowance for them, they will completely collapse. And if they collapse, remember 7.7 million Malaysian working within the SMEs. So it's very critical for us to get the strategy right. And yes, we are burning the proverbial midnight candles to make sure that we get our strategy right and to help them during these difficult times. But we believe, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, that once comes July, July, with the vaccine and all that, things will be improved further. Otherwise, we are going to have quite a big challenge.
Thank you. Jayne, the Hong Kong government has launched the Distance Business Program, one of several measures launched by the Innovation and Technology Bureau to support businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. The program really provides an immediate boost to SMEs and enterprises to help them quickly build an IT capabilities to scale operations and improve revenue. What other activity has the government done and launched to promote innovation and technology in Hong Kong?
Okay, maybe I'll just go back a little bit and also talk about some of these, anti-pandemic kind of measures. I think everyone, where they can, to try and support their own economy and industries are definitely, apportioning kind of decent size amounts actually to try and support. With us, that's not exception. So the one that you're talking about, the DBIS program, what it is that it allows every single company, in order to try and keep operational, to apply for government funding to when they leverage IT solutions to enhance their business and keep that going. So what it is, for example, if you are setting up a Zoom account, or you're suddenly having to do, install a CRM kind of system into your operations in order to target your clients more effectively, or you're looking to build an e-commerce website, all these kind of things that enable you to actually keep your business kind of going, you can potentially apply for this DBIS kind of program. And each company will get up to a maximum per company of something like 32,000 euros, which is, it's not like a small amount. And that's over 3 kind of projects, with, the cap being about 10,000 per project. So we've got that. We've got other kind of measures where, Dr. Hussin also mentioned, for example, on wage subsidies for really hard hit sectors. So the F&B, for example, we've had to close down restaurants as and when we've been getting these different waves, and the government has been, at times really restricting activities and social distancing measures, and at other times relaxing as we see the situation improving. So it is very flexible, but it does mean that companies, especially SMEs, are having to basically adapt constantly, and sometimes through no fault of their own, they're having to close down. So obviously it makes sense. The government is actually trying to support that where they can. So, you've got wage subsidies for the tourism sector as well as the F&Bs, but it is very tactical. It's not across the board. And that is the one thing. It's very much looking at exactly that, that specific industry, the potential impact on the economy and the people, and then coming up with a very targeted response to that. So, there's a whole bunch of different kind of programs in place for that. But just going back to the innovation and technology sector, I think, governments around the world are recognizing that, innovation and technology is a part of the future. You've talked about, convergence. I hear convergence all the time. Every industry is leveraging tech in some kind of level now. And previous ones that may not have necessarily used tech is also getting involved. So, to foster that kind of development, you need a multi-prong approach. It's not a case of just hopefully throwing a ton of money at it and, and hoping it's going to hit the mark, the bullseye at some point. You've got to really look at your situation, what the market situation in Hong Kong is like, but also not just us, what our neighbours are doing as well, because Hong Kong, first and foremost, has always been a conduit, initially for China. I mean, in China, the gateway to and from China, we hear this a lot. It's still the case. But increasingly, through the kind of free trade agreements we're doing with various countries, ASEAN, Asia, other kind of places, it's becoming a conduit also for companies looking to leverage Hong Kong to go to these kind of markets, and vice versa for companies that are interested to tap into mainland China. They're still going through Hong Kong for some of the reasons I've mentioned before. The technology side of that is, we are trying to basically support that as much as we can, because that tech influences all of that. So there's other kind of like funding programs, for example, from early R&D kind of stage right through to commercialization. There's a bunch of different kind of financial programs in that. There's also programs to try and nurture talent. So Hong Kong has what's called the Inno Hong Kong kind of program, whereby we're going to be launching this soon, but we're working with 30 of the biggest research universities globally, collaborating with some of the universities in Hong Kong across a whole bunch of different areas, including, biotech and, Industry 4.0 and all these kind of activities to try and develop the talent and create spin-off effects from that side as well. There's, we mentioned Industry 4.0. Hong Kong has always been a little bit, some of the people in Hong Kong have owned manufacturing facilities in southern China. So historically, there has been this kind of development of industry kind of advancement, and we are now going to be opening the Industry 4.0 Centre, which is a huge, sizable development next year. It's been organised by, actually not next year, 2022, which is under the jurisdiction of the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park, to try and really foster this development and really bring high-tech, sophisticated manufacturing of products in Hong Kong going forward. We've also augmented that kind of IT development with different types of visa programs. So there's a fast track kind of visa program for tech talents. There's PhD support programs and all these kind of things. And we're thinking collectively with these kind of multi-pronged kind of approach, we can really help to, ensure that Hong Kong is going in the right direction and not just rely on the financial services and the property sector or trading and logistics as our main industries going forward.
Thank you, Jayne. Ricardo, in the current pandemic, you've advocated that R&D projects are really aimed at long-term success and are important for strategic development of companies. Now, for this reason, innovative projects should not be really abandoned in this current crisis, but rather their potential should be used. How do you think governments should finance this?
So thank you. That's a very good question, especially in this time. I would maybe just not necessarily say how they should finance, but let's say talk what measures can be done, right? Because as Jayne pointed out, sometimes just throwing money at something, as you can point it in the right direction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they happen. I could maybe just touch upon, I think I referred this a little bit, but touch upon what activities we normally do and how, at least from our experiences, we're not a government agency, and our experience, what mechanism we see that work. I mean, where activity comes in, they're having specific funding programs in specific areas, of course, helps this. I mean, this is the work that we do in the network, and it's all about slowly motivating or trying also companies to see how they can recombine their key competencies to actually address something new with maybe a cooperation with a research institute or cooperation with a large corporation, how they can actually develop a new service, new technology to actually go for a certain end, right? I mean, that is definitely something where governments can help in putting money on the table, as long as it's directed. Another point, which I think it's highly complementary, it's not only putting money on the table to nudge them in that direction, but also providing opportunities. And this is something where we also help, right? I mean, with the European Commission, with the European Union project, we are not necessarily responsible for helping them get the funding. So that's been done. What we help is how do we create opportunities, right? And we've done this fairly successfully with the top corporates in Europe as part of this program. We are trying also to focus on technologies that are more early stage and also how we can develop these opportunities a little bit later. And something that we're trying out, this is quite recent, also with procurement. How do we facilitate the innovation procurement process? So how do we create these opportunities? And this is also interesting because here the company has, let's say, a buffer of time to actually develop this solution. So it's basically, let's say, a protective market before, or we call it a beachhead market or proof of concept market before they actually roll it out, right? And we are actually starting one which together with CERN for the European Open Cloud. base. And here, this is, of course, something very new, which is a huge demand to do with the European single data policy. So the idea of having a European single data market. And here we will see in the portfolio of 5,000 companies, what are the companies that already exist or could be a little bit further fine-tuned to help contribute towards the European cloud base, right? So I would sum it up just like that. I mean, we can help with trying to understand what technologies and what areas, helping directly with the access with funding. So these are the measures that normally governments can do. And then also providing the right opportunities. Sometimes the right meeting can take a grant of 2 million euros much further than having grant and not really doing the support for the company to then go further. Okay, so I would leave it with those 3 points.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got just close on 5 minutes left, and I really wanted to ask one question of the panel in general to sort of make it more of an open discussion. The three of you have all been talking about your specialist areas. Dr. Hussin's been talking about Malaysia becoming this powerhouse of digital transformation in Southeast Asia, particularly in the progressive Islamic world. Jayne, you're talking about Hong Kong in particular in terms of the greater access it has to the southeastern part of China. And then, of course, Ricardo, you're talking about Europe. You're very specialist and knowledgeable about your particular areas. But, you know, we live in a global world and a global stage. What initiatives do you have in place to reach out to other regions for international trade, international cooperation, you know, leveraging what others are doing to benefit your own region? If I can ask you just briefly, Dr. Hussin, what initiatives have you put in place in order to reach out to the rest of the world?
I think outreaching to the rest of the world has been a continuous process. We have a ministry called Ministry of International Trade and Industry. Under that, we have an agency called MIDA, Malaysian Industrial Development Authority, and they are responsible by and large for reaching out to the world to bring in the MIDA is equivalent to Invest Hong Kong. So essentially, they do what Jayne is doing, and what MDEC does is that whenever it touches any technology space or digital space, then we will come in. We have host of incentives, host of whatever, you know, visa, this, that, everything. I mean, the normal, usual packs that comes with it. Essentially, in the mid-80s, we were looking at creating jobs. So any FDIs would do. So anybody can come here and low-cost labor, this and that. Unlike South Korea, for instance, who started with the innovation front in the mid-80s. So today they have the largest PhD per capita in the world, and even the corporate company, they have the largest PhD per company in the world, which is Samsung. So I think there's going to be a shift. I think technology innovation is going to be the way forward. And if we do not do that, we will have challenges. Bringing an outreach.
Sorry, Dr. Hussin. Jayne, do you have anything to add to that? Because we're running close to our time.
I think for us to connect to other ecosystems around the world, and this is an increasingly connected kind of environment, we leverage the StartmeupHK Hong Kong Festival and the Hong Kong FinTech Week. I mean, we create these events not because we're event organizers, but because it can bring all these different stakeholders together, and we could share and learn from others, but as well as showcase the kind of opportunities we've got going on our shores. So, for example, we just had FinTech Week that finished about in November. We attracted, I think it's the first time it's gone digital, but I think we attracted over 1.2 million viewers. Wow. For the StartmeupHK Hong Kong Festival, which is again the virtual, we attracted about over 160,000 people virtually. So this virtual thing is brilliant because it gives us the reach that we can, you know, that we never could accommodate before. But yeah, we do think it's important to keep connecting with other people. In fact, I've got a shared event with some of the MDEC colleagues going forward as well.
That's brilliant.
We're very open to collaborating with people all over.
And Ricardo, at EurA, your initiatives on reaching out.
So, I mean, here we're a consultancy company, so we basically follow the mandate that is given to us by the people who contract us. Under the scope, we have in some networks interface with Korea, mostly the ones on autonomous ships, because they had some interest there. South Korea, because they had some interest there in seeing our expertise. On the one that we work on the European level, we don't have that mandate of working internationally, because that's just not our mandate there. It's not our scope of the work we do. But I would add, I mean, Dr. Hussin was actually saying some points about data working for everybody and this technology working for everybody, have this inclusive approach. And that's actually quite well aligned with some of the ideas that are being thrown around for the new European Data Act. Which is, of course, very important, especially talk about AI data. How do we make this actually work for the benefit of everybody? And we know the problems that this is bringing about. So it's definitely a topic that there you can see some spillovers into Matic.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everybody. This has been a very, actually, the time went very quickly, and I wish we had more time to spend diving into some of the issues and challenges that you have and the visions that you have for the development of your particular regions and countries. I thank you all very much for your participation. Thank you, Dr. Rais Hussin, for your time. I really appreciate it. Jayne, thank you very much for staying up late in Hong Kong. And Ricardo, I look forward to meeting you in Portugal soon.
Very much.
This year. So thank you very much indeed for your valuable contribution to this panel.
Thank you
very much.